Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a this is an issue. If y'all recall, Martin and Wood is our on-call engineering services for water rights, and so we have from an engineering perspective, we have Martin and Wood, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my thing here. And for legal, we have Berg Hill. And so in a few years ago, there was an effort. The way these contracts worked for several years was there was really just an open contract with them with no real defined task order amount or anything like that. It was just they were just available, and they charged based on whatever was necessary in terms of the work that they largely thought was required to complete. And so a couple of years ago, prior to me taking over as director in March of 2021, the city's legal department at that point in time really tried to rein in those contracts because they were basically open-ended. You know, they would, I think between Berg Hill and Martin Wood, it totaled in excess of $1 million annually. And what we did when we came on board was we tried to rein that in with scopes and annual contracts that are renewable contracts. Now, they're both good consultants for us. They've done great work for us as a city. I think they were doing with what they thought was necessary based on the guidance that they were given, which at the time was limited direction and guidance. We've become a whole lot more active in helping guide their work, and have subsequently also set up annual contracts. Well, we did that for the first time, and so this is what they do: water rights engineering, strong local presence, and they've been our consultant for a couple decades. And so in May of 2019, we did an original contract amount of $400,000, and then in spring that's when I started as director, and then we did a contract renewal in July of 2020, and it was a $300,000 amount. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to rein that back down even more, so we were trying to dial that back. And by July of 2021, we have renewed that as a $350,000 contract amount. Well, as you can see in the timeline there, there was no contract for years up until 2019. And we did an original PSA, and then there was a gap in Q1 and Q2 of 2020, and then the PSA renewal came in Q3 of 2020. And then the PSA renewal has now gone from July to July, which is an odd time frame for a PSA renewal.
Yes.
And we did that same renewal again in 2021, and then we'll do that again in 2022. However, at that point in time, we'll end up with a 6-month extension because we want to get back on an annual January PSA renewal. So what we had a challenge with was there was that gap in the contracting from a PO perspective. And so you can see what they typically do is the protection of our existing water rights. They continue to do that. They've also worked in the past 2 years on a water resources master plan, which the city has never really had. It's more of a confidential document that helps guide how we utilize water resources, and that was happening at the same time that we were reworking all this contract. So essentially what happened was we brought down that PSA renewal contract down too far and went to $300,000. And at the same time, there was that gap and that additional work for the water resources management plan that was going on at the same time. And so we developed a $50,000 change order to that contract. We were working through the city process because we thought that was actually within the city manager's limits according to the purchasing policy. However, there's a trigger in there that if it exceeds 10% of the original contract amount, in this case, the original contract amount was $300,000, the change order is 50,000, so it exceeds that 10,000, that 10% amount, that it needs to go to city council. And so what we're asking the board to review today is, or basically support, is this cleanup change order that helps bridge that gap where we had a gap in the PSAs and we had a gap in the work that was being performed. What I can say is that there's no work in here that has been in excess of what we've expected or what we've directed. This is a PO issue that developed in a gap between those two POs. And so we're not going to let this happen again. At least that's our goal on this. Again, there's a number of things throughout the utility that we're working to improve, and this is another one. So we have a new business solutions division, which Sarah leads, and will have a much greater control over contract management. We're going to align that contract with a calendar year, and then we'll make sure that there's the appropriate contingencies in the contract amount in case something special comes up that we're not anticipating. Essentially, what we're looking for is board support to approve this change order to Martin and Wood for the work that they have done for for that gap period, as well as the water resources master plan, so that we can move that on to council and request their approval as well.
Great. Can I get a motion then to recommend the city council approve by motion a change order to the 2020 to 2021 PSA with Martin and Wood Consultants in the amount of $50,608.25.
All right, I move that we recommend city council approve by motion a change order to the 2020-2021 PSA with Martin and Wood Water Consultants in the amount of, oh, I need my glasses for that, $50,608.25.
Can I get a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion around this? Any questions? All right. Then can I take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, very good. Next, we'll move on to 2022 bulk chemical purchases. Floor is yours, Angela.
Okay, thank you. I will, oops. I'll share my screen. All right, is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, well, good evening, Mayor, council members, and Water and Sewer Board members. My presentation tonight is on the 2022 bulk chemical purchases for the Allen Water Treatment Plant. This will be remarkably similar to what we presented last year. We're going to be seeking approval for our 3 high-ticket dollar amount chemicals. We have sodium hypochlorite, which is commonly known as bleach. That chemical is actually used for disinfection here at the plant. That is provided by DPC Industries, and the proposed dollar amount for that is $225,000. We also have sodium hydroxide, which is more commonly known as caustic soda. We use that at the plant for pH adjustment, and that also is provided by DPC Industries. The 2022 proposed PO amount for that chemical is $112,000. And finally, we have aluminum sulfate, which is more commonly known as alum, and we use that here at the plant for sediment removal, and that is provided by Chemtrade Chemicals. And the proposed 2022 PO amount for that chemical is $190,000. Are there any questions?
Angela, this is John. I'm just curious if you're seeing price increases on chemicals like is happening in so many other sectors right now.
Yes, we absolutely are. So we are a member of MAPO, and they guarantee prices for the first quarter of every year, and then they actually increase prices quarterly. So built into those numbers is a quarterly adjustment that we anticipate. They actually don't tell us what that is until right before the quarter starts. So we're feeling pretty good that we've included some additional increases. We were lucky last year that we didn't have any chemicals that came from areas that were hit by some of the weather issues that they had in Texas. And then we also lucked out that we didn't have a lot of issues due to the driver shortages, which is, I think, a big problem for some of the other folks who require chemicals for both water and for wastewater treatment.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? All right, can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by resolution the 2022 bulk chemical purchases as presented?
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay. Next up is city ditch piping. Steve, I think you've got it from here.
That I do, Chair. And let me share my screen. Is everybody seeing the screen?
Yes.
Alrighty, so this is an information item on the city ditch piping project. Mayor and council members, this is an extended version of what Director Van Ry had presented at study session on last Monday. We'll be taking a deeper dive into some of the elements of the proposed project. Okay, so background on city ditch. City ditch is one of two pieces of infrastructure that we have to deliver raw water to the Allen treatment plant. The other being the Union Avenue pump station off the South Platte River. It's directly connected to Chatfiel Reservoir, and the active reach runs up to Harvard Gulch Park. That's about 12 miles in total length. It's about 6 miles from Chatfield Reservoir to the Allen treatment plant, and that portion of the alignment generally follows the Santa Fe corridor. It is a gravity system, meaning that pumping is not required to move the water. And it is an Englewood owned and operated system. And it does consist of open channel and piped reaches, which is the subject of our discussion today. So focusing in on those areas of open channel, we have 3 segments between Chatfield and the Allen plant that are still open channel. Segment 1 is about a ½ mile. That's down at the southwest corner of Mineral Avenue and Santa Fe. Segment 2 is around the St. Mary's Church and Littleton Cemetery, and segment 3 is up around Bellevue Park. The good news is there is an active development going on in Littleton in the segment 1 area. Pending progress and ultimately development of that site, that portion would be piped by the developer. They would fund that reach. So the city ditch users consist of the city of Englewood and Centennial as raw water users, meaning we can take water off of city ditch and treat it for distribution. The remaining are contract users, and those contract users take it for irrigation purposes in the irrigation season between April 1st and October 31st. So when we had previously discussed city ditch opening day, that's what that means. We're opening it up to our contract users. Those contract users are actually getting the water through Denver Water. So it's not our water that they're using, but it's our infrastructure that is used to deliver that water. So as far as the timeline on city ditch and our raw water usage, it is an old facility. So it was originally constructed in the 1860s. In the 1950s was when Englewood built the Union Avenue pump station that could bring water off of the river, as well as the Allen water treatment plant. And in the 1960s, the McClellan pump station was built. That facility allows us to pump water from city ditch up to McClellan Reservoir. In 1970 was when Englewood took over ownership and operation of city ditch. In 1980 was when we started leasing water to Centennial, and the important component there is that relies on the city ditch system. So so the water is delivered from Chatfiel through city ditch, pumped up to the reservoir, and then from McClellan Reservoir it can be delivered to Centennial. In the early 2000s, those of you that have been around a while will remember the T-Rex. That project actually severed city ditch to its current termination point at Harvard Gulch. And then finally, the other important city ditch history we wanted to point out is in 2012, the city of Englewood and Littleton entered into an intergovernmental agency agreement. And there was a couple important acknowledgements, which I'll touch on a little bit further later on in the presentation. But basically, it acknowledged and documented the controlling use of city ditch as an important raw water infrastructure for Englewood. Okay, so wide pipe, we'll spend a few slides talking about the advantage to piping those remaining open channel reaches between Chatfiel and an Allen water treatment plant, and we'll do that through some visuals. And so this is an aerial from 1955 showing the Highlands Ranch area when it was still a ranch. And at this point, this is the same period of time where the Union Avenue pump station was constructed and the Allen water treatment plant was constructed. Again, we're taking water off of the South Platte River and relying on the quality of water that's flowing through there. And so moving forward to 1985, we can start to see some development around the South Platte River in this area. We can see the construction of Chatfield Reservoir, the larger reservoir, and McClellan Reservoir, the smaller one. But most importantly, we're starting to see the development of Highlands Ranch. And so at this point, development has just started. There's a population of just under 10,000 residents. The construction of the wastewater treatment plant that is still in service today, that's providing wastewater treatment for the Highlands Ranch area, that was originally constructed. And so now we're present day, and so we can see that the Highlands Ranch area is essentially mostly built out. We're up over 100,000 residents. The Marcy Gulch wastewater treatment plant, which again is treating the Highlands Ranch area and discharging that effluent into the river, is operating at about 6 million gallons per day at this point. And then looking elsewhere along the Platte River corridor, if we look back to 1955, very little development that's surrounding the river. Up here by the Allen treatment plant is where we are taking the water off, and so we're basically getting pretty pristine water off of the river, as opposed to what we're seeing now, which that entire area is now developed. And so again, we have the effluent coming out of the wastewater treatment plant going into the river, and we have all this urbanized runoff that's flowing into the river as well. So we have a lot of paved surfaces, we have a lot of streets and parking lots that are collecting that water in the stormwater system and then delivering that water or discharging that water into the river. Another thing I want to point out here is the city ditch alignment. And so again, through the city ditch system, we are able to take that water essentially right out of Chatfield Reservoir and bypass all of those the treatment effluent and the stormwater runoff that's influencing our water quality, and taking that right into the Allen treatment plant. Okay, so this is actually a picture I took just a few weeks ago, and this is the South Platte River at our intake, and you can see that the flows are pretty low there. During dry periods, we can expect that flow to be pretty heavily influenced by that wastewater treatment plant effluent that's down by Highlands Ranch. While those facilities do have the ability to treat wastewater to a very high standard, it does have constituents that we believe are impacting our water aesthetics. And so the ability to circumvent that, we believe is going to provide some really important water quality benefits. So what does piping allow us to do? One of the most important things that allows us to do is increase the capacity in the system. Another important component is it allows us to operate year-round. And so a really important part of this discovery was as we started to take a closer look at our water rights, we realized that a lot of our water rights allow us to take at the river as well as through city ditch. So historically, we've taken most of that water from the Union Avenue pump station, and we've actually started taking more water through city ditch, but we're limited by its capacity. And that limitation is because those open channel ditch, when you operate them at higher flows, they can overflow. And we actually tested that when we started up this spring to see how much water we can move through the system. and we identified areas where we had basically maxed out. And so a pipe system would allow us to pressurize that and allow us to move more water through the system. So some additional factors or benefits that would be realized from piping. One is sustainability. So as I mentioned, city ditch doesn't require pumping, and so the energy consumption and costs associated with pumping would go away if we're able to move that water through city ditch. It provides resiliency. Pipe systems are low maintenance systems, and they also have really long lives, often 100 years or more. Mechanical facilities don't. Pump stations, we tend to assume they're going to last about 25 or 30 years. So there's a lot of resiliency with having a low maintenance and dependable infrastructure moving that water. From a redundancy standpoint, the more water we can move through city ditch, that gives us greater redundancy in the event that we would not be able to, or Union Avenue pump station went out of service. There's a safety component to it. Open channel systems present a certain risk that could be mitigated through pipe systems, and a reduction in capital investment. So that the improvement in water quality that would be realized through city ditch can potentially substantially reduce the investments in processes at the treatment plant based on the water quality we're getting out of the river. So these pictures just demonstrate a few of the challenges we have with open channel systems. So here we see two elevated flumes. Those prevent vulnerabilities. Those have structural elements that tend to degrade over time. In the center, we can see a stormwater outfall that goes right into the ditch. This is actually not too far upstream of where we take water into the island treatment plant. We have bank erosion in some of the areas that we have open channel reaches as well. So what are the challenges faced with piping city ditch? And one of them is going to be community opposition. So we've had some Historic Preservation Society members from Littleton Englewood come forward and mention that their desire to have a historic designation on city ditch. We have certain residents that have this water feature running through their backyard that I'm sure really like that water feature. That may be vocal opponents to this, and we have some folks that public trail users that may have some opposition to it as well. Again, thinking of the relative impact of those impacts to that select group of individuals versus the overall impact to water quality that would be realized by Englewood residents, we feel that it's still an appropriate path moving forward. This will have some permitting compliance aspects to it that will certainly add some time and work to dedicate to that. We'll be performing an easement assessment. We expect that we'll probably have to acquire some additional right-of-way. There's a constructability element to it because we have an obligation to provide water to our contract users. We need to make sure when we phase this construction and time this construction that we're still able to meet those obligations to the contract users. So this is a screenshot from the IGA I mentioned earlier with Englewood, and it's very explicit. You know, there's no uncertain terms around the mutual agreement between Englewood and Littleton of the primary function of city ditch, and the acknowledgement of our intention, even almost a decade ago, of the plans to pipe the entire length, and acknowledgement that we oppose historic designation of that. So this is a really important document moving forward as we progress the project. So what are some other related city ditch activities? I mentioned the development that is active down at Mineral and Santa Fe. Again, the good news with that is, as part of that development would be the developer relocating that portion of city ditch. We have increased flows. We're still not to where we would like to be, again, because of that capacity restriction, but we have started increasing flows and taking advantage of that improved water quality. We are performing an analysis, and we're diving deeper into our water rights to get a better understanding of how much of our annual demand could be met through city ditch. And then finally, we are addressing some issues at Linhart Reservoir, which sits right on an open channel reach. They're not a contract user, but they actually have a direct connection to city ditch. So we want to address that. So for next steps, this is a complicated project, and so we'll have an initial phase of work that will be basically a preliminary engineering public outreach mode where we'll start the community outreach. We'll get a good understanding of what our permitting requirements are, what our property requirements are, start or resume our interagency coordination, and perform a hydraulic analysis to assess how much water we can move through the system. And again, we'll be addressing the issues at Linhart Reservoir. So our anticipated schedule, we intend to release an RFP for that phase 1 work early next year, proceeding into a design phase pending the timing of any permitting requirements that might be associated, moving into design in 2023 with a potential construction in the 2023 to 2025 time period. Again, we're thinking this is probably a multi-year type of effort because of that phased approach and having to keep the ditch in service to our contract users. So that concludes my presentation, Sharon. I'll be happy to take any questions.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
First one would be, where is Linhart Reservoir? And second, what kind of issues do you foresee with that?
So I'm going to back up to, so Linhart, right where this jog and the red line is, that's actually a jog that's going right around Linhart Reservoir. So that's, if you're familiar with the St. Mary's Church area, it's adjacent to St. Mary's Church. And so there was, and I'd have to look up the timing of the decree, but there was a decree that was associated with that parcel that contains the reservoir that that allowed for seepage water to feed that reservoir. Well, over time, there's been direct connections, surface connections to that, and there's been subsequent agreements that have basically stated that this provision of surface deliveries is voluntary, and Englewood can come back at any point in time and remove those. And there's other provisions around the continued provision of if we're to remove those direct connections, and even if we pipe the ditch, that there's provisions related to the continually providing the seepage amount, or providing some monetary monetary compensation if we no longer provide that seepage. And so surrounding that reservoir is an individual that has voiced a strong opposition to removing that. And so those are some of the public outreach that'll be involved with certainly that portion of the piping project.
I'd just like to add to that too. The individual that we've been working with actually took it upon themselves a year and a half ago or so to install their own pipe connection to the ditch to pull water off to help put water into this pond essentially. And we've subsequently let them know that that's an illegal connection and it needs to be removed. When we first made contact with them about that, we got some pretty significant pushback about our ability to remove it, even though we've checked all the decrees and this is something that is absolutely within our rights. This reservoir creates a hydraulic problem for us as well in terms of managing how we move water through the ditch. And really, as we move forward and we start to look at taking away the illegal connection and moving it back to a seepage only type of connection, we anticipate that we'll get a strong level of pushback.
Okay,
Joe,
thank you.
did you have your hand? Joe, did you have your hand raised? I'm
Yeah.
reading this right? All right,
Yeah,
go for it.
Thank you, Chair Moore. And thank you, Steve, for the presentation. You mentioned the different contract users mostly for irrigation purposes, and then I saw listed last was private users. Can you expound on that? Are there a lot more like smaller users that aren't mentioned in that list, or are there like individual homeowners and that kind of thing that utilize the ditch, or is it limited to those larger organizations?
There are a few, and the history of them being a private homeowner using that, I can absolutely report back on that. It's just a handful of them. There's about a dozen total users, and I think we have 3 or 4 that are those private homeowner types.
And they're using it for irrigation purposes?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I just had a thought myself. It just seems to me that the individual that took it upon themselves to access the water seems like that would somehow help us in our position of the need to exert more control over the ditch, but I'm sure that will work itself out one way or the other. All right. And Steve, yeah, this was just informational, right? So no direct action needed from the
That's
board
correct,
tonight.
Chair Moore.
Great. All right. Believe next up we've got under staff's choice, backflow prevention and cross connection control. And I'm not sure who's taking it.
Okay, and Angela, I believe, are you providing an update on where we're at? Or was I providing an update? We can't hear you. We still can't hear you.
Yeah. Angela, we're not getting you.
No one can hear her, right?
That's correct.
Okay. We have easy solutions to this. Come on in. Go ahead. No, go ahead. You're good. You're good.
Hi, is this a little bit better?
Yes, going well.
Yeah, my microphone stopped working, so that was very fun. We have achieved our 90% compliance for 2021. We are moving forward, getting as close as we can to that 100% compliance by the end of the year and marching on towards March of 2021. And we are taking a lot of the lessons learned from this past year into making the program a lot more robust in 2022. And a lot of that has to do with the new environmental compliance coordinator that we hired, Lauren Worley. Are there any questions?
No, so it sounds like you're comfortable with that progress, so getting from 90 to 100 by March. Is you're saying the deadline?
Yes, and I actually I got a text from my distribution and collection supervisor while we were on this call that we just hit 96%. So we are slowly marching on towards that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Actually, I'll jump in. I'll take over again. So just another thing on this. So we had originally talked back in the fall about needing to shut people off if we were getting close to missing a compliance deadline. We have achieved the 90% compliance deadline for the end of this year, which is, being at 96 is really encouraging. That other 4%, we're still doing extensive outreach. However, if we start getting into the early part of the next year, so we basically pushed off the shutting off water because we're still trying to work with people without needing to shut them off. We're pushing that till after the first of the year, and then but we're working to make sure that they are notified and have been repeatedly notified over and over again that if we can't get them to comply with this, we need to turn off their water in order to be compliant as a system.
Very good. Mayor Sierra, I think you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Director Van Ry, so the 4%, is that still commercial? Is that multi-housing units? Anything 3 and above, I believe, was the limit. Where are we seeing the 4%? And are you saying 90% is the target that we have to hit for 2021? Does that increase to 95 or 100% for 2022?
Yeah, so it's 90% for December 31st of this year.
Okay.
By March 31st of next year, it's 100%. So we only have 3 more months in the beginning part of next year to get to that last 100%. That remaining 4% is actually a distribution of all. So there's some smaller commercial properties, there's some restaurants and some, you know, like stores and maintenance shops, as well as some multifamily. So it's really a cross section of everybody that has a backflow device. It's just a small subset.
And last question, Director Van Ry, are we keeping track of this like within a software system that we purchased, or like how are we gonna make sure that we have the right names moving forward? Since we did this earlier.
So that's been one of the most difficult things in this process, and where Angela and Sarah and their staffs have really worked hard to clean the data. One of the biggest issues we've had is the data has been in a lot of ways repetitive or duplicative or the wrong information, and that's been really a lot of the work that's been done. So right now we have it in the tried and true Excel spreadsheet to help us not only track what the cleanest version of the information is for that backflow owner, but we're also tracking the number of times and how we have made contact with them to ensure compliance. So that if we're in January and we're saying we're going to shut you off, and they come forward and say, well, this is the first time I've heard of it, we can show the number of times we've sent a letter or made a contact or made actual physical contact at the location. So that's what we're doing right now, more immediately to achieve that March 31st date. Longer term, there's 2 things that we're doing. One, we're backing this whole compliance schedule up so that for next year, we're going to require everyone to submit their compliance by the end of July. So that gives us the remaining 5 months of the year to sort through any of the issues that may arise with people that have problems with parts or problems with a backflow that they didn't realize wasn't working. But it gives us much more time. So we're not utilizing the end of the year as the scramble to meet compliance. The other piece of this is once we're in the process of moving to a new billing system, and within that billing system will be a module where we can actually track this much better than the way we're tracking it today. So I think that new billing system rolls out right now, scheduled to roll out in May. And so we anticipate by that new system being able to do a much better job of keeping a good data set as it relates to this.
Thank you, Director.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for that update. Still staff's choice.
So the next thing is an update on suspension of water shutoff moratorium. So if you recall, when we went into COVID, we said we're not going to shut people off for non-payment. We've been keeping track of that, and we've been planning to turn those back on, and Sarah's going to talk about our update on that process.
Okay. Let me share my screen here. I just have a couple quick slides to run through. Can you see that?
We can.
Okay. So back in September, we presented this board with the plan for updating or for resuming shutoffs for non-payment. My slides aren't, there we go. So our plan is to, well, the shutoffs were started in place for COVID relief. So shutoffs, there's been a shutoff moratorium for the last 1.5 years or so. And our plan is to reinstate those shutoffs for non-payment in February 2022. Our shutoff procedure is customers receive a red tag notice for overdue balances, and then they have 5 business days to pay that balance before their water service is suspended. In order for their service to be restored, we would require full payment of the current balance and then any past due balance would need to be under a payment arrangement made with the billing staff. So we would attempt to restore services the very next business day following payment of the current balance. I've got an update. We presented some initial numbers back in August or September with August data of the delinquent accounts, and there hasn't been a whole lot of change. So there's always been about 400 or close to 500 total customers with outstanding balances. These totals haven't really changed. I think there's been a net of 2 accounts that have dropped off of the delinquent status. There's 11 commercial accounts that have been paid off since we presented back in September. So that number has reduced significantly, but then there's 9 residential accounts that have been added to this total. So about 48% of those or half of those accounts owe $500 or less. 106 accounts have balances over $1,000. And then the top 10% of the accounts, again, make up the top 10% of that, or the top 10 accounts make up the top 10% of that outstanding balance of the 368,000. And this has been pretty steady throughout COVID. There hasn't been a whole lot of change in this outstanding balance or the outstanding number of customers. Again, we are pushing the communications to let people know that that we will be reinstating shutoffs. So we mailed a notice with the October utility bill. It was a bill insert letting everyone know that we would be reinstating shutoffs in February. There have also been reminders printed on the November, December, and in the January bills in the notes section. We're going to plan to go ahead and repeat that bill insert, letting people know in January that shutoffs will start in February. We posted on the utilities website and on social media that shutoffs were starting in February on October 24th. Our plan is to push out social media posts again here in December, and then 2 in January, letting folks know about shutoffs reinstating. And then finally, for the customers with balances over $1,000, we put out a specific letter. We had basically as the similar notice as a red tag posted on their door and asked them to please reach out to a billing specialist to talk about their bill. We got several calls after we did that. We did it back in October, at the end of October. And we did get several calls from customers that either started a payment plan or just wanted to understand what it meant that we were restarting shutoffs for non-payment. Several of them just kind of said that they would take care of their bill in February. So I think, again, we're planning to reach out to those customers with balances over $1,000 here this week. We are posting the same notices to let them know. So we expect another influx of calls and potentially payment plans set up. We have also provided information for assistance programs on our website. The LEAP program, so low income housing, has some funding for overdue water and sewer balances, and we've pushed out that information to customers as well. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Sorry. Sarah, this is John. I've got a quick one. Just clarifying I think you said the January bill will have another insert. Just to be clear, that's targeted to the delinquent accounts, so that, that much like the people getting the red tags on their door, that's specific to those individuals.
Sure. Correct? So we can't specifically put those inserts in for those customers. So it'll go in everybody's bill. But there's a notice on the top to basically say if your account is current, then please ignore this notice.
Okay. Very good. Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, there's also programs available at the county level, correct?
There are, so Arapahoe County does offer assistance. We have had that information on our website continually during this process as well. I spoke with the county representative, I think it was just over a month ago. The participation in their program has not been that high, but it is available for those that are in need and that can qualify.
Okay, and are we making, is that part of the insert as well, or part of the communication that these are the different? Okay,
It is, it's clearly stated on our website as well.
perfect. Thank you so much.
John,
Right.
this is Jim.
Yes, Jim.
Sarah, what would our normal shut off be? If somebody was delinquent in January, when would we shut them off for non-payment?
So once they're issued the red tag, they have 5 business days and then they are shut off. So they have whatever the due date is, and we're in different quadrants, so there's different billing dates. So essentially there's a 3-week period where bills are sent out and then there's a due date on that bill. And if it's past 30 days, then they get a red tag, at which point they have 5 business days to pay their bill.
Okay, so basically it's 30 days. I mean, the 30 days after.
After they receive, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, I think that'll take us to our final agenda item, a customer issue.
Yeah, this is just a really quick one that I wanted to just alert the board to. So, Sarah and her staff have been working with a customer that's, we had an issue where a reader for the meter reads the amount of water coming through, and then there's a unit that sends that information so it can be picked up by the meter reader. And those batteries die, and so we have to get into people's homes to change those. And in this instance, we have a customer who we spent a year sending 6 notices to this individual to try and get into their home to change this. And so what we do is we escalate the flat rate account, and what it does is that each month it doubles, and so it doubles to a point where I believe it was when they had a $500 bill, that's when we got their attention, and then they finally responded. Whereas the 6 notices we said were not responded to. Well, so what we do is we go in, we take a picture of the meter, which gives us the actual data, actual usage, and then we compare that to the estimated usage that we've collected over the course of a year, and then subtract that from the last real read that we had, which in this case was over a year ago. And so what we found is that that we issued a credit, but it also resulted in there was a lot more water that went through the meter than we can explain, and the customer has pushed back significantly, saying that the adjustment wasn't accurate and it was something that needs to be adjusted down even more. And the challenge is we can only go off of the meter data itself, and the meter, when it last worked, provided a number, and then when we took a picture to change out the sender unit, had another picture of that meter reading, and then we subtract and divide, and that's how we end up with the bill. But when you look at the numbers, it does not actually, it doesn't make sense. It seems like there's a significant amount of additional water use than what this property has historically used. So that could be an indication that there was an ongoing leak for a long period of time. We're not exactly sure. So right now we're trying to evaluate the best way to approach this, because on one hand, it does seem like it's out of the normal pattern for this user. On the other hand, we spent a year trying to get them to allow us to fix this part of the system. And if there was an ongoing leak occurring for that period of time, typically we can recognize those within a month, and then we can get those fixed so that we're not wasting water for a long period of time. And so right now we're trying to weigh we can either go off of the numbers by themselves, which I think would definitely frustrate this customer, or we can come up with some kind of a middle ground. And then I guess I'm just bringing it to the attention of the board because this is something I can work with them on. I just want to get the sense from the board, is this something that we want to be more understanding with our customers, given all the things that have brought us here, or do we want to be more rigid with our customers because we spent a year trying to get this fixed and we're essentially ignored? So really, and then that'll inform how I ultimately respond to the customer.
Let's see, Joe, and then Ty.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Thank you, Director Van Ry. I just wanted to weigh in. I would see some middle ground as making sense here. I mean, I think there's, you know, if you really wanted to stick it to them, you could, you know, charge them the full amount. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having mercy on them a little bit. You know, I don't know if I'd go all the way back to whatever their average was before, but splitting the difference or giving them 20% off or something like that, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ty?
Sure. I think I agree with what Joe's saying. The part that makes me nervous is, you know, you're cutting them a break and meeting at the middle, but that's at the expense of the other ratepayers. So I was curious if there's any precedents from some previous encounters, maybe shorter than this, which seems out of the ordinary, or anything in the operating rules that are going to dictate this decision or have influenced how you're considering moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're considering is, so if we were having an issue where there was a normal leak, we would offer relief if we found a leak and you know, someone's bill spiked and they were able to find that there was a leak, that it was not because they were being irresponsible, they're using way too much water. We work with them to offer a relief for that kind of incidental occurrence. And that's just an approach to try and, you know, work with our customers so they're not hit with some bill along with whatever leak that they may not even realize they have. I think the difference here is the fact that if there was a leak that was contributing to this, we would have been able to figure it out within a month or two. And it's the fact that it took so many points of contact to get them to respond. So I think in reality, there is a precedence that we can use, and this is what's led us to the idea that it's not establishing this whole new precedence. It's just balancing. There's some responsibility on the customer for not responding.
Let's do Travis, Caitlin, and then Jim.
Yeah. What do the numbers look like now? Are they going back to normal?
Yeah, they've largely returned to normal.
So for how long can you estimate on that? Do they seem like they were out of balance? Because if it's 10 months that it was out of balance, then it's the 10 months you want to negotiate on, I'm guessing. And
yeah, it's a year. It's for a year.
So it was 12 months, the whole
Yep.
year that it was out of alignment. Okay. And is it like an extreme amount? I mean, I can speak from experience in Denver. We had a house where we hadn't realized somebody was hitching their hose up to the back end of our house and using water. And they apparently knew when we were coming and going, and 500 gallons at a time, they were just taking a bunch of water. And it wasn't until the water board there contacted us and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "We're not doing anything." So I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but it was an extreme bill by the time we caught it.
So from a volumetric perspective, their general average is right around 3,000 to 4,000 a month, their historical average. And through this period, their average went up to around 18,000 a month. But if you're thinking about the winter,
amount,
it's hard to use 18,000 gallons in the winter.
Yes.
Which is leading us to thinking that there must have been some kind of an unresolved leak.
Wow.
That's what we're theorizing.
Caitlin?
I think my answer kind of was answered with Drevis's. I was just wondering how frequent this happens. If this is a very rare case, basically.
Something like this is fairly, I would say, is pretty rare, because again, it's a combination of the numbers. When you look at them on their face, don't make sense, but normally customers will respond to us. So I think it's the coupling of those two things which makes it rare.
Jim?
Oh, hold on. I have a
Oh, go
follow-up
ahead.
question. Do you
Yes.
think it is possible that someone was hitching water off of them, that maybe a family member or someone had seen hard times and was getting water from them?
Based on
Potentially?
board member Ridley's experience, I would say that I would say it's entirely possible. Again, I don't think we have any real good, we don't have a real good explanation.
Wow.
Jim? Let's see, Jim, I can't hear you if you're speaking.
Well, I
There you
want to understand the meter itself, and that is the meter's mechanical. So there's something turning whenever water's moving mechanically, correct?
That's correct. And so there's just a set of set of numbers on a set of dials. And we took we went back to the previous hard reading off of that meter. And then when we switched out the equipment, our meter tech takes a picture of the meter to establish the real reading in that moment. And so it is a mechanical system. The part that failed is the sender piece. That's
Right, the battery on the sender.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree, I think, with Joe and what I'm hearing from others that negotiated. I mean, it doesn't make sense, I don't think, to spend a whole lot of your time or others' time, trying to recover $500 when you spent $1,000 in doing it. So,
How much are we talking?
Sarah, do you have the number?
Yeah, I do. So the outstanding balance is about $800. So if we split the difference, we'd be looking at a credit of about $240. And I would just want to mention, we already did credit this customer for the difference between the estimated read and the actual picture taken. So this is just would be an additional credit. They received about, actually I have the number, $266 credit back when they got their meter equipment fixed in July.
Looks like Ty has his hand again, and then I'll have a comment I'll make.
Yeah. I just wanted to add one thing. I think it's really important here to let the customer know this is kind of a one-time goodwill gesture. If we do decide to negotiate with them, the last thing you want to do is have this set of precedents that if you just don't answer your phone or you hide out, we will work with you and give you a 50% discount. So I don't know, just thinking about future proofing.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And again, when we do have these situations come up, and they come up relatively infrequently, what's helping me in this discussion is recognizing how the board generally wants to respond to these types of things. And so I think that's where it's helpful.
So I'll volunteer my comments. Certainly when we have a customer that has a water leak, showing compassion and working with them because that's outside of their control is absolutely warranted. When a customer refuses to participate with us in that process and allow us to mitigate that damage, I think that burden falls back on the homeowner, the party in this case. It could very well be that the avoiding talking to the city was allowed time for that issue to get resolved, and may have very well been deliberate. So I have some reluctance myself in being overly compromising when their lack of involvement prohibited the goodwill that we might have been able to extend and our ability to mitigate this. And again, so how much are the rest of the ratepayers having to absorb? That said, I don't think it's worth spending a lot of time. I still think you give some degree of a goodwill here, but I would go in with a more modest compromise, but with a very explicit, your lack of engaging with us prevented the situation from getting rectified sooner. And we don't have any indication that this water was not used. It's a mechanical meter. And let me confirm, is the same meter in place? Just the sender was replaced, but did we replace the meter?
That's correct. It's the same physical meter. It's the sending unit.
So there's nothing that suggests the meter is not working. So I mean, anyway, I don't know how you resolve it, Peter. I think it's just kind of, you take the feedback you're getting here. I certainly would not compromise at the same level I would for a customer that engages back with us on these issues.
Before I move on, that is correct, Sarah, right? The meter is still the same meter.
So the meter was replaced. It's a
Oh.
whole new register and it was
apologize.
an indoor meter. It's now outdoor. Yeah. So the whole thing's been replaced.
So I apologize. I had that incorrect. So we did replace the entire meter unit assembly.
Okay. So that leaves a little bit of grayness in terms of perhaps the meter. I'm not sure how those things can malfunction, but and suddenly start reading more. I would suspect if a meter fails, it's more likely to stop reading than overread.
Yeah, typically they'll underread.
Yeah. So I would, anyway, does that range of feedback give you some help?
I think it does, and it actually falls in line with generally where as Sarah and I have been talking about this for the past couple of weeks of how we would respond. Ultimately, what they have the right to do is they can come appeal back to the Water and Sewer Board for relief. And so again, it's not clear cut. So that's where we thought, we should at least have a discussion with you. And so we'll move forward. We'll look at some kind of a compromise, and then ideally that will resolve the issue. If it doesn't, then we'll recommend that they come talk to the board, which is their right.
Sounds good. We have gone a little over time. Is any final questions or comments from the board?
There was one last request, which was that the meeting in January is apparently the same night as board interviews for prospective board members. And there was the request to either start this meeting earlier that day or move the meeting. And so if it makes sense, we think it would actually make sense to move this meeting out a week to January 18th, same time, same Tuesday, just instead of second Tuesday, the third Tuesday. However, we would like to get the board's feedback on that.
No need to raise hands, just pipe in if anyone has an objection to moving the meeting to the 18th of January.
Actually, Peter, I may have an objection to that just because the Tuesday is the day after MLK Day. So that would be a regular council meeting. So I'm not sure what's on the agenda now, but.
No, that's a really good point.
Unless you're trying to avoid a council meeting, Peter.
No, not at all.
I couldn't completely understand why you decided to reschedule to that day, so.
No, not at all. Well, I mean, so I guess we could move it earlier, or we could move it to a different day of the week.
Is there anyone that would have difficulty with a 4 o'clock meeting of this board on the, what are we talking? Sorry.
The 11th.
Yeah. An hour early. I know it's typical business hours, but does that create any hardships? And does that fix council's challenge, scheduling challenge?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like we're good to move that up an hour.
And we
So-
will make sure that we take that into account in our agenda and try and get this to be a really short meeting on the 11th.
Okay. All right. Like to thank staff for holding really tight to the schedule. We had a lot of subjects. We did great to the last one. And Peter, I was laughing when you said this will be short, because this is the thing that engaged everyone the most. So that was fun. Anyway, everyone have a very happy holidays, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
all.
Bye.
Happy holidays.